So my presentation is on the female representation in art at the Denver Art Museum, more specifically the paintings that you can find in the Denver Art Museum. The questions that I have for analysis are: do women have to be naked to get into museums? What the ratio of women in paintings versus the female artists are, and how is the female figure portrayed in painting? To give you a brief art history lesson, we're going to start with what defining being female is in art. And I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think that you see in an art museum for females? Because what I expect to see is a female figure lounging relaxed, almost like an object, beautifully perfect skin with perfect breasts just peeking out of her dress, and her eyes are as blue as ocean waters. Although we all know that that's not 100% accurate of a representation of the female figure. That's not exactly what you're expecting to see in an art museum, though. The Denver Art Museum is also not very different in these regards. The females that are found in the museum are also kind of like this, pictured like porcelain dolls. The idea of being a female in art is actually dated back centuries, though. One of the earliest representations found are seen as what we think are called birthing dolls. They were full figures, which we think were used as fertility charms. And this idea of connecting the female figure with fertility continues to be a common sight in art history. Full figures, the pomegranate is also a really big one for fertility. So when did females in art start becoming so doll-like, almost like a porcelain doll? And my answer is that we don't entirely know when this occurred. The Gorilla Girls, however, are some of the first female activist artists who are looking into this. They are a group of, like I said, feminist activist artists ranging in sexuality, age, and race, and all of them are female, who are trying to prove the point that women artists are not fairly represented in the art world. Something interesting about them is that not only do they defend female artists, but they also defend African American artists as well. The advantages to being a women artist, this one down here on our right in the pink, is important, and I wanted to bring 3 to your attention. 3 of them are working without the pressures of success, seeing your ideas in the success of others, and being included in the revised editions of art history. This translates to being a female artist means dealing with gendered ideals in a different way. As the Gorilla Girls say, less than 5% of the artists in the modern art sections are women, but 85% of the nudes are female. Getting on into the art that I will be looking into, I did find many more artists that were male who were exhibited right there when I was there. Starting off with Edgar Degas. Degas is really known for his ballerinas, so I had to put one in here. One of the ones that you can find at the Denver Art Museum is Dance Exhibition, created in 1880. Here we see a group of young girls preparing for what we assume is a dance exhibition. And even though we assume that they are young because they are ballerinas, it's just kind of an innocent term, we do see the beginning of perfect breast peeking out of the front and center ballerina's top. They're also expressionless, which is important. Anthony Van Dyck is one of the ones that I wanted to throw in here just as like an earlier representation of a female. This piece was created in 1633. This is Lady Dacre. We see her lounging, she's relaxed, she's staring wistfully off into space. And this is actually an example of a portrait. And portraits were really common amongst all age groups and genders, but there was some sort of gendered ideal between them. Usually, like the Lady Dacre, women are seen relaxed and with a dainty smile. John Singer Sargent is another good example of this. We don't exactly see the girl front and center. This piece was created in 1878, and it is another portrait, but it's a side view portraiture. Unlike many of the other artists, though, she is pictured as a darker skinned woman. She's beautiful, though. She's got perfect skin. No blemishes can be seen, and her hair is beautifully updrawn with flowers in there. Yet another kind of female, feminine feature. And who knows what this individual was actually doing when she was being drawn. Um, she could have been a bartender, for all I know. But we don't know what she is because she is just a head. Getting deeper into portraiture, Luis Montero is one of the ones from Latin America I wanted to put in. And this piece is called Una Imitación Antigua, created in 1868. You see her, she's also lounging, she's looking off wistfully with a very dainty minor facial expression. She is an anonymous woman. We don't know who this is with. And we see her foot resting. She's not lifting a finger. She's completely relaxed. Now, this one is another portraiture as well. This is by Joseph Wright of Derby, and it is Elizabeth, Mrs. John Boxstock, and this was created about 1769. She is an upper-class woman. She's pictured pale. She's looking off into the distance. You see her perfectly toned breasts peeking out over the top. And she's wearing a very tight dress. Yeah, we see her in a very feminine position, and she's once again not doing anything. She's just sitting there. This one is actually in 1822. This one is in the Americas. This is actually a Native American woman that we are seeing off to our right. I can't pronounce her real name, so we're just going to call her what it translates to, which is Eagle of Delight. We see her pictured much paler than she probably would have been. She's pictured almost really similarly to Lady Dacre from the 1700s, 1600s era. She's pictured beautifully with these beaded necklaces and very. It almost looks like she's got a pattern on her blouse of sorts. This is one that I had to put in. Kenneth Miller Adams was one of the only male artists that I could find with women doing something more dynamic. These women are harvesting wheat. They're working hard out in the fields. They've got the stuff, the cloths to cover their heads. But this was created, I want to point out, almost a century later than what the other ones that we are looking at were. And that's important because most of the stuff that we see from like the 1600s to the 1900s, like to the early 1900s, is portraiture, and the women are pictured not doing anything. Getting on into the female artists, I did just want to say before beginning this section that I would like to point out that there are fewer examples. I actually only could find two. I tried to find at least 5 examples done by female artists that you are able to go see right now. But unfortunately, there were not many that were on view right now. There have been past exhibitions that feature female artists like Frida Kahlo, but for the sake of legitimacy, I only wanted to focus on the works that you are available to go see. And they are planning on putting in more works by Mary Cassatt, who I have in here, in a later gallery that is supposed to be opening later this year. This is Mary Cassatt's work. This piece is entitled Mother and Child, and it was created around 1889. This is one of the few female artists that you can go see in the Denver Art Museum at this moment. Pardon me. It's this mother figure, and she is holding onto this baby. The baby is obviously just adorable. He's holding his hand in his mouth, and the mother's face is not visible. But the reason why this face is important that it's not visible is that we don't put an identity to her. She is the mother. She is a mother figure. She's not a woman. She's not this person. She's a mother figure. And this plays into that women in a fertility role, which I think is so important. She's also not pictured super, super thin like some of the previous works. We see almost, it looks like a belly that is on her, and she's pictured a lot more full. The other one that I found that you are able to go see right now is by Eva Gonzalez, and this is called The Window, and this was created around 1865, 1870. You see two young girls here, but they are also pictured much more dynamic than even Degas' ballerinas. Um, we see books, we see them not exactly relaxed lounging, just kind of sitting there. They're enjoying the day, it seems. One of them is playing with a doll, and the other one is reading, which is not something that most women were really pictured to be able to do. And it is obvious that these girls are upper class, but I still think it's important that they are pictured in that way of being able to read and literate. It just plays into more of that importance. When I say I only found two, that really is all I've got for the female section. So we're going to get right on into the content analysis. So to answer the questions I answered at the beginning of the presentation, do women have to be naked to get into museums? No, women do not have to be naked to get into the museums, but they do tend to be in a specific light. What is the ratio of women in paintings versus the female artist? In the Denver Art Museum specifically, the ratio of female paintings versus female artists currently is rather slim. This could be different in other museums, though, as I did only look into one. How is the female figure portrayed in the paintings? When it comes to the portrayal, I think that there's an obvious difference. The works by male artists seem to be simpler, less dynamic, and the women are really just there to be there and get their picture done, while the women in the paintings done by other women are much more dynamic, giving the women pictured things to do and in different roles. Pardon me, like the woman holding the baby. And in conclusion, female portrayal does differ between gender identity, although differences are only slight, they are still visible, in my opinion. Women painted by the male gender are typically found soft, pale, lounging, relaxed, almost just ornamental there. While the works painted by other females, we see the women doing things like playing, reading, and taking care of children, which are all very important roles to, I believe, a lot of women. You don't have to have a child, but like I think it gives you a sense of power. And I would just like to say that there are a few things that would complicate my analysis. I only looked into one local museum. To improve my research, I could have looked into different museums to find more work and examples. This experiment could not, however, be 100% re-replicated, as the Denver Art Museum is always changing its exhibits and actually recently have opened up several other exhibits, and they are planning on opening up other exhibits, so the data might have slightly different results if it were to be recreated. And these are my references.